Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Horses Advocate podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so grateful. I want to let you know that this particular podcast, is actually a two-parter, but all within one podcast. So you don't have to listen to anything else. It's going to be divided into two kind of lucky things. And it is, the first is, maybe it's three, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. The first is, I guess today I'm going out to see a horse that I talked about a couple of podcasts ago, saying that it was unfortunate that no veterinarian is going out to serve this horse. And that kind of bothered me because it just bothered me. Here, this horse was in no man's land between three major cities that had veterinarians, and she wasn't able to get any veterinarian to come out. Well, I doubt if it's because of me. I really do. I mean, I'm not that influential, but she was able to get somebody to come out from one of the towns, and they suggested that they get somebody else from Palm Beach that has the ability to use an endoscope, and that horse is going to be scoped to see if there's any problem with his epiglottis. And that's occurring today, and I've been invited to come out to partake in that. So I'm very excited. I've already told the veterinarian who's coming out how excited I am that somebody's stepping up and helping this old horse. It's got a body condition score of 2 that is now having trouble swallowing. Let's at least try and find out what's going on and get this owner a good diagnosis and go from there. So yeah, it's kind of exciting to see that. It's so frustrating. And I've gone over these frustrations before, that veterinary care is waning. In other words, there are fewer and fewer veterinarians out there to serve the people in the rural areas. So yeah, kind of excited, and I'll report back on that on my next podcast. The second thing I want to go over is I'm going to the Florida Association of Equine Practitioners Conference this week. It starts Thursday and runs through Sunday, and I just wanted to go over the schedule, what I'll be learning, because I'd like to do some podcasts based on what I learned, and that should be several podcasts. So that's going to be exciting. So I'll go over the titles right now. Let's see. The third thing is I ran out of coffee, so I ran out to Starbucks at 5:30 this morning, and I got their coffee and mixed it with my collagen powder and butter and caprylic acid. If you don't know what caprylic acid is, no, it's not a hallucinogenic drug. It's an 8-carbon length of fatty acid that's found in coconut oil, but it's not the other fatty acids found in coconut oil. So it's a purified form that are taken in that along with the butyric acid and butter to make some ketones. So hopefully, as I take a few more sips, I'll get my brain on fire for you guys. Oh, Starbucks tastes different, that's for sure. But that's okay. My coffee is coming today. Let's see. There's something else I wanted to go over. Oh, if I have time in this podcast, I want to go over something that we talked about in the latest rounds. If you're not a member of the Horses Advocate, you're missing out big time. I'm going to have some rounds. I'm going to try and do some more things and develop other avenues of interest where people can call in and get access to me. I think that's going to be really helpful. In return, you're supporting the mission of me getting these podcasts out to everybody in the world and keeping the website up and running for people to find things. Speaking of the website, thehorsesadvocate.com is a place everyone should go. You can just go to the search bar and type in what you want. You can type in protein, soybean meal. You can type in fence boards, bedding. You can type in liver disease. You can type in anything you want. And the search engine is going to find if I've got something about it. If I don't, I fully expect you to send me an email and saying, hey, I want to know more about, for instance, liver disease in horses, or the Coggins test. Like, who's Leroy Coggins? And I'd actually be able to tell you that one because I actually met the man, worked with him at Cornell. So let's move on. The FAEP, the Florida Association of Equine Practitioners, has a conference starting on Thursday, and the titles are going to be Healing with Horsepower. and that's all about regenerative medicine. So that's going to be kind of exciting. And then we have the Florida laws and rules. And every veterinarian who is in Florida has to take this and the one after lunch called Dispensing Legend Drugs. You can do this online, or you can do this as part of the course or being there. And every Florida vet sits there and listens to what a legend drug is. Legends are, they're, how do I explain this? You guys know Banamine, Rompum, Equiox, things like that. Those are legend drugs. They also talk about controlled substances and how to dispense them. Not that I have to, but again, these two courses are for all veterinarians, and that includes the small animals as well. They're more involved with that. And then the last one is emergency service, thinking outside the box. That's put on by Amy Grice, who I know. She used to be with Rhinebeck Equine. And she's very vocal about trying to improve the life of the horse vet. And this is going to be one of them, and how we can look at emergency services for people who are in more rural areas. Like where I am right now, it's hard to find a hospital that's not more than, less than an hour away. So we need to have a vet who can come right away and triage and let us know if we can do that. Right here in Palm City, we do have one veterinarian whose practice is just emergency medicine. That's all she'll do, which I think is fantastic. And she apparently is very good at it. Nobody seems to complain about her, and she seems to be available most of the time. I just, it's 24/7, 365. And for a lot of veterinarians, that's kind of tough. All right, let's look at Friday. They start with a sunrise session at 7 o'clock in the morning. The science of joint supplements. What does the evidence say? And this is going to be one of these promoted talks put on by a company to hawk their thing. And they're going to talk about what does the evidence say. And of course, if you've been following me, most of the evidence says garbage. They don't really give a good analysis due to underpowering, underfunding, agenda-driven studies, and multiple biases that are put into these studies, which you as a horse owner are unaware of. For instance, I saw on television during a football game an advertisement for a vaccine that they said was 95% effective. And I just laughed because I said, that's probably relative risk, not absolute risk. And you're not giving me the whole picture, the whole story of how really effective this vaccine is. And of course, they had an asterisk next to it, and the asterisk said in clinical trials. So they're bamboozling us with hocus pocus numbers and words. Clinical trial means, oh, somebody must have actually done the work. And of course, they're independent. They have no agenda in here. And of course, they'll give you the truth. They won't try to skew things to make something look better than it really is. And I'm not the most cynical person in the world. I usually am pretty much upbeat. But the more I dive into what science really is and how we want evidence-based, the more I realize that the evidence isn't true. For instance, just to repeat myself ad nauseum, if I told you that the sun circled the earth, and I would sit there with you for as long as it takes to show you that the sun comes up in the east, circles overhead, and goes in the west, and then I call you an idiot for not believing it, you might be, you might agree. The sun is circling the earth. We did for almost all of time until about 500 years ago, when people brought in better instruments. And a guy named Galileo, and he said, no, I really think based on the evidence that I'm collecting that the earth is circling the sun. We're rotating on an axis. And of course, they sentenced him to death, burning at the stake. Instead, his sentence was commuted to burning all of his books. Then someone in Poland named Copernicus came out and said, no, I really think he's right. Now, I don't think there's anybody on the planet who doesn't understand that we're a circling ball going around sun. And that happens everywhere in the universe. At least that's what we know today. But maybe tomorrow we'll get some other evidence, like Einstein's theory that we are not sitting in nothingness, but there's actually an ether out there that can have waves in it. And they finally proved that. It cost over $1 billion to set up this sensor that was, miles long in 2 different places to judge if the earth actually was moving. They could see that that relative to other things in the universe, our earth is actually bouncing up and down like a ball in a pool with waves going by. And now that's been proven. So who knows what tomorrow will bring. But let's go on to what I'm going to be learning. There are two tracks on Friday. And I'll go down one track and then I'll go down the other track. The first track is why understanding injury pathogenesis is important. Well, that's interesting because I'm going to look into that. Are they actually going to talk about lack of protein in the diet or stress or things like that? Are they going to talk about repetitive motion in racehorses, for instance, or jumpers, excess weight landing down on tendons and ligaments, support structures that are failing to support? That'll be really interesting. So I'll pay attention to that one. The next one is using what we know to influence injury prevention. Again, you know me, I'm all about prevention. I can't wait to listen to those things. It's probably why I spent my almost $600 to go to this thing over 4 days. Let's go on. Medical perspectives on the equine social license to operate. Wow. It's become a critical title to discuss society's tolerance of animal use in sport, especially horses. So all you racehorse fans out there, or jumpers, or anybody, barrel racing, cutting, roping, it's just all of it is, of course, bronc riding, all of it is looked now through lenses that aren't our lenses. They're looked through lenses of people sympathetic to the animal's plight. And this is why I say you have to get your horse's house in order so they can stand up to the sport that they've been brought into, and make sure that they don't become lame and they don't become a statistic, because everyone's talking about horses that are breaking down during a race and then being euthanized. Whether it's behind a screen or not is irrelevant. They're still being euthanized. And people say, well, the horse didn't have a choice. Okay, well, the horses are counting on us to give them the right choices. And that includes proper training, good surfaces to ride on, and of course, excellent nutrition, honoring their evolution. And we're just not doing that. Are you hearing me, feed dealers and supplement companies? We have to start feeding these guys right. Because if somebody's going to come in and point fingers and say these horses are breaking down, we have to understand, is it because the trainers are alcoholics and don't care? Or, which they're not, they actually love their horses? Or is it because we're being told to feed certain things and that's causing muscles and tendons and ligaments and tegument and connective tissue to fail under stress? So there's a big question there. So I can't wait to listen to that one. Update on yearling thoroughbred repository findings. That should be interesting. That's radiographic findings that people are putting in to a repository around the world so they can look for trends. Okay, then we have lunch, and then advances in the diagnosis of tendon and ligament injuries. Again, we're diagnosing, we want to be preventing. And then also we want to know when we can put it back into service. And these diagnosis things may prematurely get the horse back to work, and then they break down again because nobody's actually saying, gosh, we need to feed these guys. But again, I digress. And then let's see, before the break is point of care biologics for the treatment of musculoskeletal injuries, including polyacrylamide hydrogels, which are basically, they're putting a cushion, injecting a cushion into the joint. It's not a medicine. It is a medical device. And it doesn't have to be registered by the FDA, or if it is, it's registered as a medical device. Interesting. Yeah, your horse's knees and hocks are being beat, and let's go ahead and put a cushion in there, soften the blow. Again, it's still fixing things. And it really doesn't matter what kind of medicine you believe in, Eastern or Western, whether it's acupuncture or laser, PEMF, which have fixed me. I mean, I'm a big believer in them as therapies, or Equiox, anti-inflammatory pills, joint injections, they fix things. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, orthopedic surgeries fix things. But I think if we started to prepare our horses a little bit better for the sports that we're putting them into, we could prevent a lot of these injuries. And that's why I think this is important. Here's the next one. Use of stem cells for the treatment of musculoskeletal injuries. What type, how, and when? Stem cells can be stimulated by PEMF, or you can spin them out from the plasma and stick them back in. And then the final lecture for Friday is rehabilitation and monitoring of tendon and ligament injuries. So when are you going to get them back? The second track on Friday is all about equine practice, reality of equine practice, followed by creating a healthy practice culture, then how to be an effective mentor, then what is all the fuzz about EHV1. Okay, so the first three are, again, Amy Grice coming in and talking to us about equine practice. And then just before lunch, they switch gears over there and they say, what is all the fuzz, F-U-Z-Z, about EHV1, which is the equine herpes virus? And equine herpes virus has shut down horse shows and other events. It can cause abortions. It can cause a flu-like syndrome. It's highly contagious. So there's a big thing about that. The speaker goes on to have relevance impact of common and laser characterized respiratory viruses. Pardon me. I don't have my glasses on this morning, so let me try that one again. Relevance impact of common and lesser characterized respiratory viruses associated with upper airway disease. Then coronavirus in horses. Any reason to panic? Followed by protozoal mulo what? Updates you must know. So they're going on to discuss other things that are causing protozoal problems like Toxoplasma gondii and Neospora hugesi. I love how they name these things. But that will take you through to the end of Friday. If you're bored to tears, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be bored as I sit through these. Okay, Saturday, there's a single session where they have the sunrise session to successfully integrate a new graduate into your practice. Well, I don't think I'll go see that. Then you have news hour, and that's basically going over a lot of studies. They just, for an hour and 45 minutes, they just go over case studies and medical articles. It's a common feature at these conventions. All right, after the morning break, you have gait deficits associated with a cervicothoracicobrachial syndrome, cervicothoracobrachial syndrome, CTB. This is put on by a veterinarian who is world renowned. His name is Jean-Marie Denois, and he's come to Florida several times to give his talks. He is absolutely brilliant, and he effortlessly will show video after video after video of lameness conditions and how we can look at a horse and say, there it is. I'll never forget watching the one that he showed. The first rib was subluxated out. The first rib of a horse is located underneath its forearm, underneath his shoulder blade. And how he got to it and identified it and then fixed it was just spectacular. So this man is world renowned. I hope I've got this right. He's from France. So welcome, Dr. Denois. Okay, then after lunch, he has gait deficits associated to thoracolumbar conditions. Thoraco is the vertebrae where you put the saddle on. Those are the thoracic vertebrae. Then the lumbar are down by the hips. Just to clarify, the first one before lunch is the cervicothoracobrachial syndrome, which is the vertebrae of the neck and the first couple of vertebrae of the withers, and then the brachial are the nerve plexus that comes from the spinal cord in that area, coming down to innervate the forearms. So that's going to be an interesting one. And then his final one is gait deficits associated to sacroiliac injuries. So sacroiliac is definitely the hind end where the hind legs attach to the horse all the way back to where the tail attaches. So that's going to be interesting. It's open up to all veterinarians who are attending, so there's nothing in competition. Hopefully that'll be filled up. And then on Sunday, finally, we have a sunrise session, a review of novel treatments for equine osteoarthritis, intra-articular 2.5% polyacrylamide hydrogel. So that, again, is being put on by a company that makes this, and we'll have to kind of take that with a grain of salt. But the 8 o'clock one is diagnosis of PPID in practice. That's pituitary pars intermediate dysfunction, which everybody knows as Cushing's. I can't wait to listen to this one because the diagnosis of PPID is evolving, and I'm not convinced that what we're doing now is the perfect test. And I think all of you out there who have a horse that you're afraid might be getting PPID, don't worry about the test, just change the diet. Get the diet changed so you can get the hypothalamus pituitary axis under control. So we'll see. That's going to be a good one to talk about. Next one is prevention of endocrinopathic laminitis by IDing ID meaning insulin dysregulation. So again, the first one was talking about ACTH and its effect on the pituitary. The second one is all about insulin resistance, or what they call now insulin dysregulation. And I swear, it's not being dysregulated. It is doing exactly what we're asking it to do. Its function is perfect. We're eating too much glucose, and that's causing the insulin to be turned away due to the GLUT4 transport process being shut down because there's excess glucose in the cell. And that's what insulin dysregulation is. It's not dysregulated, it's correctly being regulated. So I disagree with ID, but that's just me. I'm on the fringe. I'm on the outside. I'm the guy speaking for your horse, even against my colleagues who are doing the best they can, but I don't think they're doing the best they can if they're not looking at how we're feeding the horses. But again, all these things are supported by companies that sell stuff. Okay. After the morning break, we have treating equine endocrine diseases. Is there anything new? Yeah, it's prevention. Then the next one, before the conference ends, it's the last one, is vitamin E for horses, what veterinarians need to know. I can't wait to listen to that one because everyone's high on vitamin E and how important it is. And I'm going to be listening carefully to the one question: how does a horse get vitamin E naturally in the environment? And why is everyone thinking that horses are low in vitamin E? So there you go. That is what's going on at the FAEP. Let's see if I can. Let's see. Hold on. Here we go. So these are the sponsors. The people are putting up money to make this happen. So we have Adequan, Arenas, Bimedia, Boehringer Ingelheim, Conturavet, Covetrus, Dreca, Kentucky Performance Products, Merck, Patterson Veterinary Supply, Purina, Wedgwood, and Zoetis. And then, of course, you have some more down here, which are not food companies or drug companies. For instance, Samsung, Root and Riddle, Equine Hospital, Universal Imaging, Sound. So all these people are putting money up to make equipment. But the biggest one, again, is Purina. Purina comes into everyone. I mean, it is just, you can't go anywhere in the equine veterinary industry without seeing Purina, Boehringer Ingelheim, and Zoetis, and Merck, and Drecka. Those guys are the big guns, and they drive where the program goes. So it's a biased event. I would love to go to an event put on by equine veterinarians that are sponsored by their clients. It would be nice that if every client's bill had 10% added that went into a pool to put on a conference that didn't have any bias. That'll never happen. I can tell you right now. All right. So I've gone about 27 minutes according to this little timer that I've got here, and that tells you about FEMA. Louisiana, if you're listening to me, I apologize for not reading your fine print and realizing that half of my continuing education for last year had to be in person. I think it's outrageous, but they're basically saying that if you're attending it online, that you're lying, that your the time you spent listening to the tapes and taking the quizzes at the end don't count. I'm very angry that they sent me a registered piece of mail yesterday saying your license is expired in Louisiana, and I've already emailed them and said, look, I'm taking this course this week. I'll send you 10 of the continuing education credits so you can add them. They said that's fine. I can't use them again next year, so now I have to go out and find another 10 credits just for Louisiana. They're also charging me $200 extra just for the privilege of going there a couple of times a year to help horses get their teeth floated. It's just every state, it's just a money-making adventure. They under the guise of they want to protect you guys as horse owners from charlatans, and yet we're being offered courses at these continuing education things that are suspect in their quality, or they're not allowing alternate thoughts. For instance, the American Association of Equine Practitioners could have a whole thing on equine dentistry, and they would never invite somebody like me who has 40 years of experience to come and help you, see a different point of view, to take these 80,000 floats, nearly 80,000 floats that I've done, and tell people what's going on. I'll give you an example. This week, I got a text from a client who I've known since she was a little girl. I did her parents' work. Now she's in charge and she trusts me, but she says, my vet said that this horse has a tooth that needs to be pulled. So I said, well, how old's the horse? What's the tooth number, et cetera? And it came back, it's tooth number 205. So I'm thinking this horse, who's I think 9 years old, has a wolf tooth that's appeared, and that has to come out. And I said, well, when's the last time the teeth were done? She says, about a year ago, maybe more. And now they're having bitting problems. And this vet, instead of saying, look, the teeth need to be floated because the horse is having painful response to the space occupying mass called the bit being placed in there and pushing the tongue back against these sharp teeth, instead of saying that, he found a small protrusion on the upper bar. The bar is the space between the front teeth and the cheek teeth that are in horses. It's where you place the bit. And it was a short spike. And as soon as I felt it, I said, oh, this is a canine tooth in a mare. It has nothing to do with a wolf tooth. And I'm pressing it and poking it, and the horse is just looking at me. In the meantime, on a scale of 1 to 5, the teeth in the back were an S5 for sharpness, with ulcers from the sharp teeth rubbing up and down against the cheek. And they were painful. And to go back there, it was painful for the horse. And yet this veterinarian had told her to get her dentist out here to remove a tooth that is actually a permanent tooth, maybe not, but it's under the gum. It hasn't even come out yet. It's not painful. It's not causing a problem. And, you know, what's going on, folks? This is my veterinarian's colleague who doesn't have a clue about teeth. So he's never, I assume it's a he, I don't know, would never go to a meeting to talk about common things in horses' mouths that we as dentists see. They don't want to know. Just like most dentists aren't going to go and learn about joint injections or insulin dysregulation or any of the other things they're going to be looking at. They're like, no, they're in their silo, and that's where they stay. And sometimes they wander out of the silo and they start guessing. And the owner is left like, who do they believe? It's just getting more frustrating to see fewer and fewer equine vets coming out there, each with less and less complete knowledge of the horse, more and more expertise in a small sliver of what is going on. I believe every horse vet should go out there and do a dozen years in general practice, slopping out in the mud, shooing away flies, trying to stay warm with frozen fingers, trying to do a joint injection. We all should be going through this so we can experience the full thing. It's just like my wife and I love to watch detective shows, but detectives spent a long time working the streets, understanding how the system worked before they're allowed to come up and become detectives. And I think every equine vet should work at least a dozen years doing the basics and understanding the basics thoroughly, understanding horse owners thoroughly before they move on and become a lameness expert or nutrition expert or anything like that. I think veterinarians are very smart and can do this, but I think the generation of people don't want to. They want their reward right away. They're looking to buy a house. Well, how can they do that on the income they earn, let alone get a car? Most of you know that I drive a Tesla. I was almost driven off the road. A guy, just cut right in front of me in his jacked up pickup truck, trying to send me a message that he's cool as a pickup driver and I'm no good in life, in society, because I'm driving an all-electric car. It also happened to my wife, and it also happened to the service technician, where he was actually driven off the road onto the grass to avoid an accident. These things are happening all the time. We have these prejudices that are coming out, and nobody's opening up and asking questions. The farriers are prejudiced against the veterinarians and vice versa. The vets don't think the farriers know what they're doing. Then a nutritionist will actually say, well, don't listen to Dr. Tucker. He's not a nutritionist. He's just a veterinarian. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, what? Yeah, why can't we all get together and understand this a little bit more? Well, it's because it's a generational thing. The younger people are coming out and they just believe what they want to believe. And not only do they believe what they want to believe, but they think they're empowered to make difficult everything else. And somebody was asking me about how I get to work with some of these horses and have them accept what I do. In fact, I just worked on a 6-year-old yesterday that was extremely difficult to connect with. For whatever reason, something's happened in the past. There's certainly a lot of pain in the horse's mouth from the sharp teeth. And I had to work hard at connecting with this horse and becoming friends, a trusted friend, where the horse let me take care of the issues without having to medicate him. And the horse came back with such gratefulness and just was right up in our face afterwards, wasn't afraid, was grateful, showing thanks, all the signs. And the owner was asking me, so what is some of the secret? And I've come up with a different thought. I think most people have hate in their heart. Hate comes out, and it doesn't matter what side of the political fence you're on. It's, or just that you drive on the interstate and you hate that other person because they made a mistake. They cut you off. They didn't use a blinker. They're going too fast, winding in and out of traffic. I see it every day. And I told her that the reason we go to the barn and be with our horses or our dogs or whatever grounds us is because we can let go of the hate. We can now just be who we are and show nothing more than love. And while this sounds like a hippy dippy message to everybody, if you want to start getting good with your horses and with the people around you, you have to realize that we all have hate. It happened again this week. Somebody says, well, it's a thoroughbred. And so I jokingly said, don't be a racist. And they just laughed because it's absurd, but they realized that they were pinning all the behavioral issues on a horse because of the breed that it was. It's just, it's a pony, it's an Arab, it's, whatever you want to call it. It's a chestnut mare. And that all comes from an evil spot in our hearts that we have to overcome. I don't think we can ever erase it. I think there's evil in the world, and we have to be on the lookout for that. But when we start working with our horses, we have to let that go and trust that there's somebody there, somebody meaning the horse, that wants to open up and get help if you're offering it. And help isn't always pain-free. But we can help these horses by stopping the inflammation that we feed them every day. I had a gal who says, yeah, I'm feeding soybean meal, but I'm also feeding this stuff and this stuff and this stuff and this stuff. And I said, look at all the inflammatory ingredients and all these things. You're not really helping the horse. You got to get rid of all the inflammatory ingredients before you can calm the horse down so he can even listen to you. So this is a little bit of a rant, an eclectic thing of thoughts. But thank you for listening, because I'm trying to work on a new course all about horsemanship, decomplexicating horsemanship, to follow the decomplexicating equine nutrition that I have on my website, where people try to make things more complicated than they seem to be, or they need to be, just to make themselves look more important. That's the definition of to complexicate. It's not in the dictionary. It's a Geoff Tucker word. I've claimed it and I'm using it, and I like to decomplexicate all the garbage that people are telling you about nutrition and about horsemanship, and just break it down to what it really is, essentially. So I'm going to try to focus on that in the next couple of months and get that out there. Another reason to become a member of the Horses Advocate, by the way. We do have rounds every other Thursday night, and I pour my heart and soul out for over an hour trying to answer questions and get into things to help you understand at a deeper level some of these ideas. And last Thursday, we went into the insulin glucagon ratio, which nobody seems to talk about. So I'm just going to briefly add it here. And if you want to know more, then, it's going to be discussed in depth at the Horse Advocate with drawings, by the way. But every time you eat food that has glucose in it, you're going to cause the pancreas to release insulin. And insulin comes from the islet cells. And there's two islet cells, alpha and beta. And I might have this backwards. It's just typical of me. I get things a little backwards, but just put it this way. I believe it's the beta cells that put out insulin, and it in response to glucose in the meal. So insulin's job is to grab the glucose and prevent it from damaging the blood vessels and carrying it like an escort through the blood vessels to the muscles, where they can deliver the glucose to the muscle cell, where it's used as a fuel to keep our muscles moving. It also delivers it to every other cell in the body, because every cell needs fuel, and glucose is a very cheap and reliable source of fuel to fuel the brain and other organs. Well, out of the other islet cell, I think it's the alpha one. And again, if I have backwards, please don't holler at me. But they release something called glucagon, which is similar but opposite to insulin, where glucagon comes to the fat cell and it releases excess fat. So insulin, if it can't put glucose into the cells to be used, if it's in excess, they're going to convert that glucose into a free fatty acid and shove it into fat cell, and then they're going to close the door and not let that fat out. So the more sugar you eat, and the more fat you eat, frankly, the combination of both, but the more sugar you eat, the more fat is put into the fat cells, and the more fat the body becomes. And that fat can't come out unless glucose comes down to less than glucagon. And that's where the ratio comes in. So if the insulin to glucagon ratio is 1 or more, then no fat's going to come out of the body. It's when the glucagon becomes greater than the insulin that fat will actually come out of the fat cells and you start to lose body fat. Interestingly, the standard ratio for Americans on their standard American diet, which is also the acronym SAD, which is a SAD diet, is 4-to-1. So we can never, ever lose body fat on the standard American diet. And then we go and we have a high protein meal, like a steak, and we think that's going to help us, get our protein intake. But then we are celebrating, we have the chocolate thunder from down under, or we have some sort of sweet dessert, or we have the bread with our steak, or we have the mashed potato or baked potato with our steak. And the insulin to glucagon ratio goes up to 70-to-1. So there's no hope, even though you had a high protein meal. This is why horses that are on soybean meal, but also eating a lot of grass, their insulin to glucagon ratio is too high. And that causes the horse to remain obese. So things like that, that's what we talk about at the Horses Advocate. We get into the weeds, so to speak, but sometimes getting to the weeds helps to clarify our understanding of why horses are easy keepers. It's because their insulin to glucagon ratio is high. And then you have the hard keepers where, for whatever reason, insulin is not doing its job and shoving the fat into the fat cell. So they're called hard keepers, and we feed them everything under the sun, and the horse still doesn't gain weight. It's an insulin glucagon issue. And there's other issues, other factors that may be also included. And then the horse is inflamed with all the inflammatory ingredients you're feeding them. So they're thin and wild-eyed. And it's frustrating. And then they become laminitic, even though they're lean. So it's a large group of conflicting factors or coordinated factors that occur. I think I'm going to wrap it up with that. I'm trying to put a lot in here, but I'm going to be reporting next week, and I might have more than one podcast, get a couple of them out to talk about what I found at this meeting. So you guys can get all excited about that. There's probably, 10 podcasts, just if I do one for each thing that I visit, or glob a couple of them together into one. But I'll take notes for you. I'll come back to you and let you know what we're talking about in the equine veterinary field and how it relates to you as horse owners. But I can assure you right now, I'm going to say the same thing. Get your horse's house in order. In other words, get its insulin levels down. Stop feeding excess sugar and inflammatory ingredients. Start adding more high-quality protein to their diet. And just because a horse is laid up doesn't mean they're not chewing. And if the horse is chewing, their teeth need doing. And so don't put that off. Find somebody who knows what they're doing. Get in there and get those points off every back cheek tooth, and the horse will be happier. All right, that's it, folks. I'm going to wrap it up, and I appreciate you all being here. Talk to you later. Bye.
Hey everyone, Doc T here. Thank you for listening to my content. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up, and give a star review? However it's presented to you, I want you to do that. There's two reasons. The first, of course, is to improve this product. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, what I can improve upon, what topics you want me to cover. But more importantly, it's also going to help others find me. And by doing that, you are now engaged in this mission of helping horses thrive in a human world. By you helping, we can reach others. And that I would be so grateful for. And remember, go to thehorsesadvocate.com for updates on this information. Thehorsesadvocate.com. And again, thank you so much for being here. Doc T out.